interesting. Pension funds diverting towards conservation. Might be an interesting financial instrument. Thank you so much, Ms. Harry, for joining us, and we look forward to speaking to you again in future.
Thank you.
Well, of course, that brings this half of our, or this part rather, of our broadcast of the Sadc Summit on the Transfrontier Continental Areas engagements to an end. We will be back with more updates within the hour from myself, P.C. Mnyika, Susan Masona on sign language, and of course Ian and Rumbi at the Harare International Conference Center. That's it for now. We'll be back with more later. Stay tuned.
Sigo wele mama, well, sigo wele mama, sigo wele mama, well, sigo wele mama, sigo wele mama, well, sigo wele mama, sigo wele mama, well, sigo wele mama,
ZBC Current Affairs, thriving for excellence and perfection in setting the agenda, shaping the Zimbabwean story and sustaining the narrative through detailed analysis and discussions, bringing to you polished live coverage of national events. We are ZBC Current Affairs, delivering to you the national budget, live parliamentary debates, independence, Heroes Day and Defense Forces events. We bring you insightful documentaries, special programs, and thought-provoking debates. ZBC Current Affairs. We are definitely Zimbabwean, telling an accurate, balanced, and unfettered Zimbabwean story.
Zimbabwe is like the heartbeat of this region.
We need to remain focused, and we need to know that we are our only helpers.
It doesn't make sense to procure goods from far places beyond Africa, beyond SADC, when these same goods can be procured within SADC.
New Africa is ready to fight his own battles and show that after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. These are the words of the great African leader, Kwame Nkrumah. Taking a cue from this philosophy in 1977, the Southern African newly independent countries, led by the frontline states, mooted an idea of a regional blocking that will address common economic and social needs. Such vision saw the birth of the Southern African Development Community, SADC. The Southern African Development Community, as we know it today, traces its roots in the frontline states and in its predecessor, the Southern African Development Coordination Conference, SADCC. The bloc was born out of active and long processes of consultations aimed at integration, which started in 1977. Meetings in Gaborone, Botswana in May 1979 and Arusha, Tanzania in July 1979 further pushed the integration goal. Following the Arusha meeting, leaders of 8 majority-ruled Southern African states, Angola, Botswana, Lesotho, Malawi, Mozambique, Swaziland, United Republic of Tanzania, Zambia, and the soon-to-be independent Zimbabwe met in Lusaka, Zambia on the 1st of April 1980 and launched the Southern African Development Coordination Conference.
And when the OAU was formed now, at least the continent now had a certain voice to call for the decolonization at a continental level in form of the Organization of African Unity. And the OAU then encouraged the formation of frontline states, again FLS in the SADC region, that had the likes of Zambia, that had the likes of Botswana, that had the likes of Malawi, and that had the likes of Zaire, which is now Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as Angola, because we are looking at states that had immediately assumed independence then. But again, FLS was loosely coordinated because it did not have the much needed constitutional framework for it to be called a regional organization.
SADC as a coordinating conference then came together with a resolve to build a regional voice, a regional board, to, of course, speak about how best they can integrate their voices. Then you would appreciate that a number of countries in Africa were just coming out, and some still under colonization.
When Mozambique and Angola also gained their independence in 1979, they joined part of the frontline states. So these were the countries that were at the forefront of fighting against colonialism in our region. And Zimbabwe gained its independence in 1980 and also joined the frontline states. So, but they then realized that they needed to formalize an organization with objectives focusing on economic development, because remember, these countries were mainly depending on South Africa, apartheid South Africa then. So as a way of divorcing from the apartheid South Africa, they wanted to create self-reliance within the region.
SADC's initial objectives were to advance political liberation in southern Africa.
SADC was formed to create an economic independence from apartheid South Africa, because the colonial setup of countries within the SADC region were based on the colonial setup of depending on the South African economy. So as more and more countries were getting independent, it was impossible to be a democratic country which is dependent on an apartheid regime, which was ideologically different from our hopes for democracy and equality.
It reached a time when they saw that they depend everything from apartheid in South Africa. Therefore, they said this is the high time for us now to have our own programs in order to bring development for our own country, because economy is everything. Therefore, they come out with some programs which actually helped to strengthen their economy.
Following the independence of the rest of the southern African countries, there was need to transform the regional bloc from a loose coordination alliance to a more robust and cohesive community. This realization culminated in the transformation of the Southern African Development Coordination Conference to the Southern African Development Community, SADC.
They met in Windhoek, Namibia, and that's when they formed the Southern Africa Development Community. So it was more of a transition from a memorandum of understanding to a treaty-based organization under a new name. Some of the objectives of the organization were or are to promote economic development in the region, poverty alleviation, and then also peace and security, because peace and security is one of the main issues that militates against development. So if you don't have a stable region or a stable society, there is no progress in terms of economic development.
That's why they built now the SADC in 1992, which actually purely deals with the development of the economy. But also a part of development of the economy, they concentrate very much on the issue of the, promoting security of the blocks, because if at all the block is insecure, then you don't expect to have a strong economy. But also in SADC, they concentrate very much on the stabilizations of the politics, democracy. And that's why we see, for example, we have the organ of Troika, where the issue of politics, defense, and security is very much insisted.
The thrust shifted pretty much from being political to issues of development and issues of economy. But this did not progress as much as SADC founding fathers wanted to, because of the unevenness of states with regards to economies, with regards to political situations, because post-independence, almost each and every SADC state was faced with certain global imperial designs of internal disturbances.
The principal structures and institutions of SADC include Summit of Heads of State and Government, Troika System from Summit, Council of Ministers, Organ on Politics, Defense and Security Cooperation, Sectoral or Cluster Ministerial Committees, Standing Committee of Officials, SADC Tribunal, SADC Secretariat, SADC National Committees. The SADC Heads of State and Government for all member states is the supreme policy-making institution of the regional grouping.
The highest body under SADC is the Summit of Heads of States and Government, which encompasses all the leaders of the 16 member countries. Below it, there is the organ on politics, defense, peace and security, which deals with peace and security in the region, right? And also you have the Council of Ministers, you have the Secretariat.
The adoption of protocols in nearly all major areas of cooperation and integration is one of the major success stories of SADC. The SADC Protocol on Gender and Development is one of the key protocols that have been signed by the member states.
We have seen women in SADC taking very influential positions, including presidium. We see what is happening in Tanzania, the vice president in Zambia, a woman. Here in the country, we had powerful women taking the presidium position, and including the powerful positions like defense minister currently, Minister Mchinguri. Across southern African countries, we have seen women actually assuming positions of power.
In 1996, they met in Blantyre, Malawi. They agreed on the Gender and Development Declaration, which was then later on transformed into a protocol in 2006. The view was to say, well, we have gender issues which are critical in our region. So how do we deal with issues of women empowerment? Let's collectively, as a region, come up with a protocol that will help us to deal with issues of women empowerment. You have issues of women abuse, issues of women participation in politics and economic development, which was quite low. So they came up with that particular protocol as a way of enhancing the participation of women.
In relation to protocols, the commonly acknowledged argument is that the signing of protocols has been vital, but implementation of these protocols is critical. SADC has without a doubt come a long way since its formation in Lusaka, Zambia in 1980, and for the past 44 years, no doubt a lot of progress has been made. One of the key success stories of SADC has been in the area of conflict resolution.
When you look at the region per se, the region is very peaceful, and peace brings development. Where there's peace, development is very, very easy. We can develop easily.
As the SADC 44th Summit theme says, promoting innovation to unlock opportunities for sustained economic growth and development towards an industrialized SADC. Zimbabwe under the Second Republic continues to move forward in building rural communities, setting up new firms.
There has to be seamless connection with regards to roads, with regards to airports, with regards to ports, with regards even to digital mass communication connectivity, issues of data, issues of science and technology. We must strive to share all these things. So Zimbabwe has emerged from a decadent period of political decay, and the roads that are being put in place are a first step of remembering Zimbabwe into a community of nations. So there is no way we will go to Commonwealth without going to SADC fully for our citizens to exploit, to enjoy the SADCness that can only be made possible through connections and interconnections.
For us to address socio-economic development issues within the region, we need to industrialize. And we can't industrialize individually, but we need to take a collective approach. We need to pursue value chains that are cross-border in nature.
Oh, yes.
Hence, the framework that we need to develop is a framework that enables all countries, irrespective of your level of development, you become part of the value chain node in a specific area that you are best suited for.
From construction of road infrastructure to projects to augment power supply, each day the region is working to better the livelihoods of its people.
I see the strategy that the Second Republic has taken as something that is of essence. Yes, because a child will not start walking without crawling. So the government has taken a step that it is following the true path of development. 2030 Zimbabwe will be transformed and will be transformed completely. And this will spread to the region. We will also benefit from this transformation.
Let's each jurisdiction, each nation, have a surrender portion in terms of its national income, and we pool resources together for infrastructure development. You are looking about your power lines, you are looking about your transport, your border posts, you are looking at about your how you are sharing within the waves, and as time goes on with the digitalization, how at the end of the day we are looking at even at space. How in Southern Africa we can have our own space orbits, actually specifically for Southern Africa. Look at what has happened in this country in terms of infrastructure development. Beit Bridge, Chirundu Road taking place now. Look at Harare Plumtree, Harare Mutare. Look at dams. Okay, look at the infrastructure. Those are examples whereby there are national efforts, but there is need also for regional efforts.
The connectivity is very important. Talk about the connectivity of water. Talk about connectivity of road. Talk about connectivity of electricity. Those are the drivers for our industrializations. Imagine if at all you don't have roads, how will you take some goods from the village? If you don't have roads, enough roads, you want to bring goods to Tanzania, how will you take them to Tanzania? Therefore, whenever you talk about loss, you don't talk in isolation. Some of the goods, let's say from South Africa, they pass here. And if at all there is no good roads here, then that's another challenge. Therefore, that being the case, then it is very important in order to bring development as far as industrialization is concerned, we must have good roads. Let's say from South Africa, it passes here straight forward to go to Tanzania. Easy communications. Let's say talk about communications. Connectivity to communication also is very important. Those are the drivers which will help to bring industrializations, because industrialization has to be supported, has to be aided with some other things.
Through SADC, trade has been enhanced in the region.
With some of the steps that have been taken in order to implement the free trade area is the free movement of people. You would know that within the SADC region, the majority of people within the region, you can travel visa free. You can go to a number of SADC countries without that requirement of a visa. So you can just walk up today and decide to go to South Africa. There is no visa requirement. Now, because we have that free movement of people, it would promote, intra-regional investment and also business and trade. You would know that we were the first region in the sub-Saharan Africa to have a one-stop border post, the Chirundu border post.
To enhance trade, the region is also working towards establishing a railway network that links Botswana, Zimbabwe and Mozambique, as well as the need to revamp the other railway system in Zimbabwe, Zambia, South Africa and the Democratic Republic of Congo.
We are industrializing at a very fast pace as other countries. Mozambique, for example, has already straightened its railway line, dealing with a lot of the curves on the railway line. We have seen our president in Mozambique for the creation of a new port and the setting up of a new railway station, railway line, which will be servicing goods that will become steel and iron that will be coming from Manize. So we find that the infrastructural development that is happening in Zimbabwe is, yes, at a fast pace, but it is also occurring regionally. And this is an exciting time for SADC, because the SADC that we're going to see in 10 years' time is a SADC that no one can fathom. It is a SADC that neo-colonialism fears. It is a SADC that neo-imperialism cannot stand. This is why you find that we are facing so much determined opposition to liberation movements remaining in power within SADC, because these developments that we are attaining as a bloc, these are worrying, and these are being found dangerous by the neo-imperialist agenda. So as SADC, this economic development and all this infrastructural development is a harbinger for economic independence. It's a harbinger for self-reliance. What we cannot manufacture, a neighbor shall manufacture. What we cannot deliver, a neighbor shall deliver.
There's a project that must happen between Zambia and Zimbabwe from the Lions Den. That's the construction of the rail line. In trying to reduce pressure on the road, we feel that we can promote trade by constructing that rail line from the Lions Den into Zambia. That will reduce pressure on the roads, okay, to prolong life of those roads.
So we as a country, we have that advantage of location where we are at the center. So our infrastructure, you have the Beit Bridge, right, which was recently upgraded, right, which works as a gateway, right, for the whole region. Everyone coming from South Africa going to any part of the region comes through the Beit Bridge. They will then branch going to their countries. But I'm saying we have that advantage of making sure that our infrastructure can save or promote international trade in our regional trade.
Countries within SADC need to get together, share resources, share opportunities, share what we have. But traditionally we have created barriers amongst ourselves, which are what we call trade barriers, borders. In reality, and if you look years and years here, we are supposed to be a borderless society because we share so many things in common. So why create those obstacles where you are moving goods and commodities from one locality to the other? It's because the way the infrastructure was developed by the colonial regimes, it was developed in such a way that you find it difficult to move from one age to the other.
The region has great tourism potential, and vital strides have been made in turning such potential into flourishing.
You have the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier area that encompasses South Africa, Zimbabwe, Mozambique. The CASA does have Angola, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. So we are collaborating in these areas so as to protect our environment. One of the major issues which have been an issue is the issue of elephant protection, vis-a-vis CITES and so forth. We have been able as a region to increase our, elephant heads through some of these collective policies or implementation measures that we have taken as a region.
The region has also managed to harmoniously share and trade resources such as water and electricity.
Then we also talk about our cream, the Kariba Dam. That's a joint project, a joint product that gives life to Zambia and Zimbabwe. So there's cooperation there. We talk about the Chirundu border itself, one of the biggest borders in Zambia in terms of productivity.
The SADC region is well endowed with mineral resources that provide considerable potential for industrial development.
Amongst the member states, an endowment of natural resources that, if well discovered and the value chains are actually exploited, we can actually grow the GDP of the SADC.
However, the region is still exporting raw, unprocessed products.
We need to move away from exporting natural resources, but making sure that we value add, we produce an end product out of the resources, natural resources that we have, so that we can be able to earn more money. Because it doesn't make any sense for us to be producing gold that we then again follow to Europe and buy that same gold in the form of a ring, possibly 10 times worthy than what we have produced.
you then are coming across constraints in terms of that value addition, in the sense that for you to value add, you need proper infrastructure. We are looking into electricity, water, and the like. You need a lot of financial support and financial injection. Unlike in the so-called developed countries, where you've got a lot of capital injection coming from IMF and World Bank, Southern African countries face a lot of constraints, and they lack these supportive measures.
As the region celebrates 44 years of oneness, it is critical to guard against challenges like high levels of poverty, climate change, and food insecurity.
We are still, of course, being hounded by issues of economic challenges, which I think we need to introspect and begin to, of course, find sustainable ways to deal with that.
There's a call in changing the way we undertake our day-to-day life. We have to be more and more conscious about our footprints on the environment. And that is equally true here in Africa or anywhere else. But of course, with this issue of climate change comes also the issue of climate justice. Because look, as far as we are concerned, we tend to be more vulnerable. The adaptive capacity in developing countries is not as developed as those from developing countries. And how you see that? You see that when you have a drought or a flood, the number of people who die from a flood in the Western world and those that will die in our region, there is some discrepancy. So, as we try to address this issue of climate change, we should also take into account the current level of adaptive capacity or resilient capacity of our countries.
Africa is the least polluter but pays a heavy fine. Just like Africa has not received any reparations from slave trade, we are not going to receive any form of compensation from issues of climate change. And we also suffer the most. But courtesy of technology, courtesy of scientific ways of mitigating drought climate, I think we should be able to harvest water when it is in surplus. We should be able to also invest in resilient crops, small grain, etc. to mitigate these issues. And this is supposed to be done, coordinated, maybe at a regional level.
Conflicts in the DRC's North Kivu and Mozambique's Cabo Delgado province is also a cause for concern in the region.
If there is a conflict in one part of the region, it means we have limited economic development in that region, and also we can't trade with people who are in conflicts because the focus shifts now from economic development to dealing with the peace and security issue in the region.
His Excellency President Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa assumes the Sadc chair at the 44th Sadc Summit.
This is what we need as a region, so that we keep alive the initial flame of Pan-Africanism, which caused the creation of SADC. We keep it aflame and we keep it alight, and we make sure that with the liberation leader, we can remain grounded and focused on the true ideology, the true reason behind the creation of SADC, which is to pervade democracy throughout the region, which is to pervade economic development throughout the region, and which is to pervade stability.
There is more that binds people of Southern Africa than what divides them.
The way Southern African states are amalgamated and joined together, and at times artificially being separated by those colonially inscribed borders that were authored at the illegal Berlin Colonial Conference. SADC becomes a unique regional organization in that you will find the Batonga in Zambia, the Batonga in Zimbabwe, in Binga, only separated by the Zambezi River, which tells you it's not necessarily a demarcation. So if you go to Beitbridge, there is the Venda in Beitbridge, there is also the Venda in South Africa, and Limpopo can't be a meaningful boundary to say this is where South Africa or Zimbabwe end. If you go to Manicaland, it's the same. There is the Ndau in Chipinge, the Ndau across. They even share chiefs in some instances. The Manika in Mtare, and the Manika province also in Mozambique. All these, they tell you how artificial the concept of the post-Berlin Colonial Conference states, how artificial they are. So this again makes SADC as a region very inevitable in terms of cooperating and working together by virtue of the fact that originally we were one.
Although the region is confronted by some challenges, it has to be noted that many positive strides have been made, and this ought to be celebrated and preserved. Credit has to be given to the founding fathers of SADC for creating a bloc that has contributed immensely to the lives of the people of Southern Africa.
When I was a little boy of only 12 years old, I came to Lake Chivero for the first time. And when I looked at the lake and I saw the Masasa trees, my father said, "Look how beautiful this place is." Unbeknown to me, many years later, back in 1990, I bought this property. And I bought it originally just for me, for my birds, because I had a lot of injured birds, and also for my animals. And it took me about a year or two to work out that I can't live here as a selfish man, and I want to share the beauty of Zimbabwe with other people. And that's when I decided to build a bird park, because of my passion for birds and for creation. And when you're sitting here and you're looking out at the lake and you see the blue sky and the blue water, the green trees and the grass, it just makes you feel good. And I always said that Queen Mashiri needs to reflect Zimbabwe. We don't want to come to a place in Zimbabwe and it looks like New York City or some other place, Dubai or something. This has got to reflect some. And I think we've achieved that, because the number of people who come here now for many, many years, over 30 years, they come out. If they're living overseas, they come here every single year to see if everything's still going and just to feel good. Then they can go back to their countries, wherever they live, and recharged, and look forward to coming back home the following year. But then also we get our local people who are coming out, who enjoy just what Zimbabwe's got to offer. And we've got so much, and it's stuff that God gave us for free. He gave us the warmth, He gave us the trees, the grass, nice food, pleasant sounds of birds singing. And that's where the name Kuimbashiri came from. It means Kuimba, means singing, birds, but some people translate it as home of birds. Either way, I'm happy with that.